Hi, I'm Quinn Nguyen at Intercom's, the Oil and Gas Conference in Denver, Colorado. Joining me now is Bill Yeates, Audit Partner at Hein Associates. Welcome, Bill.
Hi, Quinn. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for allowing me to share a few things with you.
First off, the financials of an oil and gas company are extremely important to investors. What are the matrices by which oil and gas companies are measured?
Well, Quinn, obviously it's oil and gas reserves and undeveloped properties. That's not a great revelation to anyone, but maybe I can share a little bit how I might look at it differently. Oil and gas reserves are disclosed both in a quantity form and in dollar forms. There are tables as to beginning of the year, changes in the year, such as production, which is obviously a reduction, additions, which are usually come from acquisitions or additional extensions and explorations, and then revisions and ending. The same type of information is provided on dollar format, but it's important to understand that dollar format is not fair value. That dollar format is presented based on prices at the beginning of each month for 12-month rolling average. And it used to be presented at the end of the year price, but everyone complained about that, saying, well, how can you pick one period in time? So they changed it to an average price over 12 months. Well, that's not necessarily any better, because in periods of increasing prices, a lot of people are complaining, saying, well, that's not fair, that's not really. But at least you have the quantity disclosure so you can put what value you have on it. And then you discount it, you provide a discount factor of 10%. Is that a cost of capital? I don't know. But the point of the matter is you get a level playing field to compare company X to company Y. Now what I look at is I really look at the changes in reserves. I look at what changes were caused by pricing changes, what changes were caused by production, obviously, and then extensions. I want to kind of make sure that the extensions are greater than production, the company's growing. And finally, I look at the revisions. Revisions are critical, because if a company has a lot of revisions and they're downward revisions, you're going to be skeptical as to reserves. Are the ending reserves reasonable? Then I compare the net present value to what's capitalized, and I'm hopeful the company has a significant cushion.
What do you look for within the footnote disclosures?
Well, the footnotes are, provide first the information as to the reserves. The supplemental information as to oil and gas is included in the footnotes, and that includes this information that I just provided. And it's not audited, but it's reviewed by the auditors, and because it's used as a basis for computing depletion and what we call the lid, or the capitalized costs or impairment, it's very important to the auditors. Now, what is interesting is that won't necessarily agree with what's in the forepart. The quantities will, but a lot of times companies will disclose what they call PV10, which is gross revenues of reserves, less exploration, less operating costs, discount at 10%. It will not agree to what we call the standardized measure of oil and gas reserve, which is provided in the financial statements and the footnotes, because it will not include taxes. And many companies believe taxes is not a relevant measure, because at least under current tax reporting, you have intangible costs which are deducted, and many small, at least smaller oil and gas companies don't pay taxes.
How do you review a company's operations?
Well, when I look at it, there's really two. I start at the cash flow from operations. I think that is a critical measure, because it really comes down to cash at the end of the day. What that reconciles is net income to cash provided from operations. It takes out the non-cash items like depletion, deferred income taxes, equity transactions, look at changes in working capital, and then it also provides what your sources of working capital are, such as are your working capital coming from equity or debt, are the capital sources coming from elsewhere, and then it also provides how you're using your capital, what's going into the ground. Then I also look at that what's non-cash. I mean, it's important to understand those, and those are provided as supplemental. At that point, I then go over to the income statement, the statement of operations, and you obviously look at revenues, you look at their operating expenses, you look at DD&A and taxes, and you look at net income. But cash is king.
Now, all of these items obviously are important when examining an oil and gas company's financial picture. Is there any other information in the financials that you find particularly important to review?
Well, I think there's a couple areas where you got to look outside the financial statements. One is the president's letter. The president sets the tone, sets the strategy. You want to look at his letter, and you want to review his letter from year to year to see how it changes. The second is in what we call MD&A, or management's discussion or analysis. A good company will provide a robust discussion within management's discussion analysis of what happened in the last year, and hopefully provide some insight of what they want to do in the next year. And finally, I like to look at what the cost per barrel is in finding costs. Sometimes it's disclosed. If you're a full cost company, within the footnotes, they will give you DD&A, which is depreciation, depletion, and amortization per barrel of production. So, if that's a high number, you're saying, wait a minute, these guys are spending a lot of money relative to their price. And then another place I do look is at, we didn't talk much about this, but unevaluated properties. That is significant. I mean, some companies have a lot of production. Some of the companies, their assets are in the unevaluated properties. But what I look for in that is when they acquired those properties and what their plans are, and that is also disclosed in the financial statements.
Bill, what else should we know?
Well, I'd only say one other thing. In my experience, as we talked about oil and gas reserves are being the important matrix, it's critical that the audit committee meet with the oil and gas engineers and reserve engineers as they do with the auditors, and also meet with them in an executive session and critically ask questions. I find that really good companies do this, and it's important. It's not necessarily all about what we do as auditors in the financial statements. It's really important what the engineers do and how they disclose, and what influences may be brought to bear on them by management. And the audit committee needs to understand that.
Okay. Well, Bill, great insight today. Thank you for your time.
Oh, well, thank you, Quinn. Good. Appreciate it.
I'm Quinn Nguyen for oilandgas360.com.